I have to do that.
There we go.
I have to do that for all of my classes. And with Zoom, it's so crazy because it's different on an iPhone, different on an
Yeah.
iPad, different on a laptop, different on Android. Depending on what device I'm using, I you have to go searching every time. Where'd they put it in
Well,
the
I've had
menu?
a, and the reason I guess the reason I'm asking to record it is that as I'm moving on into my hopefully retirement years,
Uh-huh.
I have I've collaborated with a screenwriter and a biographer, and they have written my story,
Oh, wonderful.
my spiritual story, and
Uh-huh.
it's now being it's in the hands of Woodall Press, being considered for publication. And
Oh.
with that, I've developed a speech that goes along with it, if anyone asks,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. But I've created or have come up with a plan or thought, I guess, if you will, to talk to people like yourself and others that are in the spiritual communities. And I'm interested in their spiritual stories. And I'm recording those and putting them in a library for access, obviously to the public. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one thing. The other thing is I'm trying to promote in the message overall, really, with the book. It's not, um, shall we say, a Vedanta high teaching. It's designed to, well, simply put, I mean, just seek the source.
Mm.
All the religion or the fundamental principles of all religion, spirituality are correct.
Mm-hmm.
With the chaos and so forth in the world today, I think it's time that we refocus consciousness back into whatever makes sense to you, seek that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the message. We're not looking at Ashtavakra or anything high teaching at Advaita Vedanta or anything of that nature. Just a simple message.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which
so that's
incidentally, I
really,
think is the high teaching.
well, yeah, yeah. But I mean, when you started talking in your class or um, the teaching you had given this past, I guess it was this past Sunday, yeah, uh, with Corinthians and so forth. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
moving into ecstasy and so forth right before you make that transition and really into total peace. And I think you understand what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Um, I know you do. Anyway, uh, so that's a long way around to just say I'd like to record it. Hopefully, we can put it in the library, and if it makes sense to some people, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it'll be a beautiful project. Uh,
So, first of all, I'm sorry that we really didn't have a chance to talk when you were here.
yes.
I think that one-on-one would have been wonderful. And that actually was when all of for me, very, very busy, uh, when Woodall Press and so forth was asking for a lot of information
Mm-hmm.
to support the manuscript and so forth. And I couldn't get it all together to get over there.
Right.
But
No worries.
anyway, we're here now, so that's good. Jody, however, is telling me that you have had some interesting, or perhaps have had some interesting experiences
Uh-huh.
concerning either Kundalini, or maybe you've received Shaktipat, or maybe you can tell me a little bit about how that's come about.
Yeah. Yes, I will. Um, I'm a little concerned. I'm not concerned about it being recorded. I'm concerned about being released before I'm dead. uh, yeah. See, you could, yes, okay. Yeah. That's kind of what started it all for me, John. I really, I didn't have any interest in religion per se. Uh, in 1990, I was asked to leave the Christian church that I was a part of, the Church of Christ. Uh, I grew up.
Wait a minute, you were asked to leave it?
Yeah, I was thrown out in no uncertain terms.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I grew up in a Christian family, Church of Christ, actually, and a long tradition of it. Well, I guess at least 2 or 3 generations of Church of Christ, and then before that, I've heard the family was Baptist in the South, in Arkansas. They immigrated there in 1749, and it was sort of the tradition that every firstborn son was a minister.
I
And
saw that. I saw
yeah,
that in the bio there on the write-up, but continue
yeah.
on.
Yeah, well, it was fairly important because that changed my mind. I mean, when I was in high school, I was heavy into theater. I loved it. I wanted to become an actor. That was what I was going to do. I was going to try and go to New York and go to Juilliard and all of that. And then I took my grandfather invited me to Arkansas to visit, and he just took me on this walk through a cemetery at the Pine Knot uh, Church there, little tiny classic Norman Rockwell scenery. And he just walked me along this long line of graves, all of them marked greenways, and showed me my place. And, I grew up in the military. So until that visit, I never had a sense of root or a sense of
Yeah.
really identity. I just was kind of all over the place. And I left that 2 weeks with him, deciding that I was going to become a minister, and that I would uh, join a mission team going to Germany, going to West Berlin, Germany. I didn't grow up in West Berlin, but I spent my formative years in Germany. I came to the States permanently when I was 13. And so I did that, went to Abilene Christian for seminary in biblical studies. And while I was there, I heard of a team leaving out of Berkeley, California, that was going to go to West Berlin. And so I moved out there in my third year, and started working with them. I was with them for about 5 years. They wanted me to get a computer science degree in order to get into Germany easily. So I changed my major to computer science, which there's not a computer science bone in my body at the time.
Can
And I
relate to those things.
really struggled through that degree. That was extremely difficult. I wanted to quit at every moment. My final semester, in the Church of Christ at the time, we had these little prayer partners that we connected with each other, and you kind of just share what you were going through spiritually with each other. And I shared with him that I was struggling with, homosexual thoughts, and just telling them that it had always been that way, all the way back to like I was 8 years old or so. I kind of started. I didn't know what it was. I didn't actually know the word homosexual until I was 16. So,
Wow.
And I only found out then because it was a problem even then. And it was all in my head at that point. And so I called up a church hotline and got a sermon on homosexuality at that point. And my world collapsed inside when I heard what they had to say about it. And
I can only imagine.
Yeah, and I never felt more alone in my life,
Yeah.
because even at that point, God took a step back, it felt like, and, certainly everything else. So I had never had any intention of following it, of actually expressing it. But when I got into college and was approaching my mid-20s, uh, pretending it wasn't there wasn't viable, or was becoming unviable. things were very clear that I was not going to be able to just walk through life pretending that this wasn't a part of me and that this wasn't going to express. I still had no intention of it, but I shared it with that prayer partner, and he, without telling me, sent it up the line. And yeah, and so a month later, we were having a Bay Area wide youth devotional in Hayward State University, and about almost 1,000 of my peers were there, and I was there. I was a Bible study leader at the time, and yeah, so we got there, and the minister went through all of the introductions and the rah, here we all are. And then he got very grave and he said, we have some very difficult family business to take care of tonight. And he expounded a little bit more, but didn't get too specific. And then he said, I'd like to ask Vance Greenway to stand up. And that was me. And I had no idea what was coming. I didn't know if I was getting an award or if I was getting voted, going to be an assistant, something or other or whatnot. Had no idea. And of course, what happened is he said, you're no longer welcome in this assembly. And he listed out all of the backstory, all of my stuff that I had shared, and then told everyone that they weren't to speak to me and they were only to repeat one of 3 verses to me, which weren't the nice ones. And I was escorted out and had to find my own way to the BART station to get back to the city. And when I got back to the city after the devotional, my 4 roommates came home and informed me that I had 3 days to get out of the house and that they wouldn't speak to me in the meantime and they wouldn't help me. And so I didn't have anywhere to go, obviously. And I couldn't tell my parents, for obvious reasons. And so I moved into a room off of a garage in Daly City. And I became suicidal because in one foul swoop, one evening, I lost my career. I lost all my friends. The degree I was getting was worthless for what I was getting it for. I lost my religion. I was taken all the way down to 0 and was considering taking what was remaining, just ending it. And had just a little bit of it. It was a spiritual experience, but it wasn't an experience of anything supernatural. I just somehow third-partied myself one day as I was laying in bed, kind of thinking about how I was going to do this. And I suddenly became third party to myself. I kind of saw myself from a third party perspective, and I said, no.
So you became the observer.
Yeah. And I just said, no, this is not how this story ends. This is not how this story goes. And I made myself get up without thinking. I wouldn't let myself think, because if I knew I let myself think that I would still go through with it, I would undo my concern and just go through with it. And I was not wanting that to happen at that moment. And so so I got on the phone and started calling around, trying to find some help some way. And I called Fundamentalists Anonymous, which I didn't even know existed at that time. I just found it in a classified ad that happened to be on my coffee table at that time. And I made an appointment with a woman named Elizabeth Kreiner and worked with her for almost a year, just kind of tried to sort through the mess I was in. And she helped me stabilize, helped me kind of get my wits together and to collect myself. But I ended up, at that point, I came out and told most folks in my circles. And for the next, 8 years, I pretty much just tried to lose myself. I just tried to distract myself. I became an absolute hedonist, not really out of a desire for that enjoyment, but just I still believed that I was going to hell, even though I was learning how to deal with it and how to kind of carry on my life. at a very fundamental level, I felt like I had been condemned, and I had no answer for that. I had no way out of that. And so I just built a life of utter distraction, pleasure and parties and traveling and anything. I got a computer science degree at the university, actually. I mean, with a job with them. And so, and it was the 90s, very exciting time for computer people. Money was flowing everywhere and lots of opportunities everywhere. And I just got completely lost in it. Ended up finding a person named Philip Horn, meeting him at a weekend retreat. And we became partners for about, we became partners in one sense. In my mind, we still are in a weird way, which, because he, at one point, I went to India with him. He was a Vedantan. He was a Vedantan, and but I didn't care. I never asked him any questions about it. I didn't really want to know much about it. But I saw his practice. I saw that he would get up at 5 every morning and go into his closet for an hour and a half and do whatever he was doing in there. I didn't know. And then he would come home from school and go for another hour every day. And he was so dedicated to it that even days when he called in sick, he still did his practice. And I thought that was something. And so at one point, he told me he wanted to go to India for a year to do sadhana. I didn't know what that was, but I was like, okay. And he asked me if I would keep the house and pay all the bills for 1 year. And when he got back, he would do the same for me, and I could do whatever I wanted for a year. And so we had that agreement. He went and did his year. This was in probably 95 or so, 96, that he did that. And when he came back, when I went to pick him up at the airport, I couldn't recognize him. His, not just his physical features. I mean, the only thing that changed is he grew a beard while he was over there, but really I couldn't recognize him. In California speak, his energy imprint had changed. Sure. You know, he didn't walk the same. He didn't carry himself the same. He didn't have the same atmosphere in his face. He had become much lighter and much, just lighter. And I was really struck deep by that, because you can't do that. You are who you are, and that's the rule. And if you look and walk like that, all your friends recognize you from the back just by the way you're standing, or the way that you're moving. And that had changed. And so I got interested in what he was doing. I still didn't ask him. I was too proud for that. But I began, slipping an occasional book off of his shelf here and there and reading it. But I had no intention of joining a religion or joining another religion. I wanted my own. I said, this time around, it's mine. The last time around, I did what I was told, and went to everybody else to learn and all that stuff. And this time I said, no, this time it's just about me and the heart. It's just me and the heart. I'm not going to, I had learned Hebrew and I had learned my Greek and all of that stuff in seminary. And I looked at where that had taken me and I thought, never again. This is not going to be that. This is going to be about my quality of life.
I'm just going to interject a comment, if you don't mind. As you have as you're telling this, there are so many things that have been exactly parallel to my own story. It is incredibly uncanny, totally different reasons and totally different things. But just one, for example, it's kind of like, well, I did everything the world taught me. I did everything exactly what they said. I did all of it. And the world says, do the right thing and good things happen. I did all of those things and I lost everything I've ever owned.
Yes.
That kind of thing. Are you familiar with 12-step programs?
Oh, yes. I'm working with a devotee named Tom Blakely. We're putting together a traveling seminar on for that's designed for those in
Yeah.
recovery who want to go deeper than the book takes them.
Yeah, AA is,
Yeah.
Alan, it's a beginning or spiritual kindergarten if you want to take it deeper. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, for example, and I'll let you continue, I was married at the time, had attended or went into AA in 1987. So I've been around a while.
Mhm.
And my wife at the time found my 4-step and used everything in it against me in a court of law.
Wow.
So it's sort of, yeah, relating that to being standing up at your church. I guess it would be a
Mhm.
retreat and being called out in public. Exactly the same,
Yeah.
only different stuff.
Mhm.
And, and just totally ostracized.
Yeah.
And that's happened several times throughout my own spiritual story. Anyway,
Wow.
please continue.
It's a real character builder, isn't
Oh
it?
man, yeah, you gotta get your attention.
Yeah, you
But
really.
on the other hand, you're totally free
Yeah, though it's
because
true.
there's no way or nowhere you can attack me. I have nothing to hide. Everything is in the open. Whatever you want to do, go ahead because it can't hurt.
Yeah. 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 Well, that there's a whole. I mean, within the gay community, that's pretty much the whole feeling. You
Yeah,
know, like it's like there's nothing we've crossed your worst line,
yeah,
and so
exactly. So
we have nothing else to lose.
my mantra became, go ahead, take your best shot.
Yeah. So yeah, so
Yeah.
that's kind of where I was surviving. I got interested in creating my own religion. So I was taking little bits from occasional books from him, and I started studying the Druids, and I started studying, and all these were kind of organically happened. I mean, I became interested in the Druids through some Wiccans that I had met, and then I at some point in there I'm getting to the age now where I can't really put everything in the proper chronicle order in my life as it happened.
Yeah, I have no idea. I know they happened, but I don't know when
Yeah, and
exactly.
so
Sure.
it's funny
That's why I
because
needed the biographer because I couldn't figure it out.
yeah, well,
Anyway, go ahead.
that's exactly it. I mean, I yeah. Anyway, so I just started cobbling stuff together from all different sources because my idea was I'll build my own religion with my own God and I will follow my heart in putting things together. And so those things that appealed to me, I just made them a part of it. And it was a very interesting time, a very fun time, actually. I really enjoyed that approach to religion for myself. It was deeply meaningful to me, more meaningful than my Christianity had ever really
Sure,
touched me.
sure.
And I cobbled together a little spiritual practice, although I didn't call it spiritual practice. I had no notion of a spiritual practice. I had a big a chair that I'd bought from an artist made out of driftwood from the beach. It was kind of a throne sort of thing, and you know,
Beautiful.
and I would sit on that in a room with nothing else in it, and I had a little tea crate from Chinatown, and I put a piece of glass on it. And I had my runes on there for casting runes, and I had my tarot cards there because when
Yeah,
I had taken a world trip on myself, just searching for
yeah.
my life, searching for meaning. And I lived with a gypsy woman in Prague for 6 months. And one morning, she every morning would read the tarot for her family around the breakfast table and give them instructions for the day.
Wow.
And I was there, and she would always include me in that. And one morning, she says, "Oh, let me see," because her family would all get up and go to work and school, and it would just be she and I left at the breakfast table. And one morning, she pulls out her cards and she says, "I want to test you. I want to see if you have the gift." So I said, "Okay." I was for me, it was pure entertainment at that point. And so I apparently had the gift. So she trained me on how to read the tarot, and I am kind of brought that into my life. So in the morning when I would sit in my big chair in that room, I would lay out my tarot cards. I would read them, and I would cast the runes from Druidism and read them, and then I would just sit there and go on a mental date with God, as it were. I decided that God was also a gay man, and that He loved me very much, and this was our time together. And so I saw it that way, and I was quite surprised with how much response I felt that I got in my inner world from that.
Yeah, it's your concept. I mean, you get to pick your concept. That's fine.
Yeah, well,
That works.
but coming from the Church of Christ, that was way beyond radical. I mean, I was in the land of not just radical, I was in the land of pure blasphemy. But
Oh, I see that as making total sense.
oh yeah, well, I do too now, for sure.
Yeah,
In the context of my mind back then, I was nothing made sense to me. Actually, I was just trying to get along. I just knew that I couldn't live another year without a spiritual life because I was getting suicidal again.
yeah.
I remember walking up the hill from the bar, semi drunk one night, and just thinking to myself, I can't. This is not sustainable.
Yeah.
I cannot continue to work this hard at escaping my reality, my own
Mhm.
mind. This for life, this isn't going to work. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed that night and just my head in my hands, just weeping and looking around my room. And I was successful. At that point, I'd gotten a house, and I was on the hill overlooking downtown San Francisco with a massive sweeping view of the Bay Bridge and the East Bay, and absolutely beautiful. And I was sitting there, and I was so unhappy, even with
Oh
all I
yeah.
had put together. I was so
Yep. Been there.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I looked around, and I kind of realized I didn't have anything more than I had in college. It just had all gotten bigger.
Yeah.
If my little TV was now this massive thing. My little jam box was now this massive stereo. My
Yeah.
one room off of a garage was now this full-sized house, and I just realized, I was like, God, I've played by all the rules,
There you go. Yeah.
and I feel utterly empty. There's nothing here.
Yeah.
And
Add patents and airplanes to that.
yeah. So I thought if I
Sure.
keep going this direction, things are just going to keep getting bigger,
Hmm.
you know. And so that was actually the point after that night that I embarked on my own trip around the world. But coming back to Philip, my partner at the time, not at that time. Philip still came a couple of years after that world trip, but he went for his year. He came back. I saw that deep change in him. I started focusing a little bit more on, I put together a shrine, because of his influence. And on that shrine, I just put whatever I wanted, anything that meant something to me. It could be anything, and it was anything.
Your concept. Perfect.
Yeah. And so it went forward like that. And after he got back from his year, he gave me my year, and we decided to do it together. I went up to a holistic health school
Mm.
up in Northern California and got a degree in holistic health as a holistic health practitioner, because I wanted to get out of my head. I wanted to
Yeah.
get out of my head. So I thought, being a holistic health, and I learned different styles of body work and all the meridians and all that Eastern, and
Yep.
and then some Ayurvedic stuff on top of that. And when I finished, Philip and I looked at each other and we're like, okay, well, now what?
Yeah.
You've had your year, I've had my year. This is where we're at, where we can do. And he says, I don't know, why don't we just go to India and just travel for a while in India and just let things settle out? And I said, okay, that sounds great. So
Yeah.
I told him, we made an arrangement on the way over. I said, when we go, I said, I'm not really into all the stuff you're into. So I don't really want to be about temples and meeting, monks and stuff. I said, so if you want to do that for a day or something or like that, then you just let me know in the morning and I'll make alternative plans for the day. You go do your thing.
Yeah.
I was just there as a tourist. And so we had that agreement. And on the third morning we were there, he says, oh, it's one of those days. He says, I heard that this woman, Pravajika Moksha Prana, is going to hold darshan over in the Sharda convent, and he says, I want to go see her. And I said, oh, well, that's cool. Oh, and they told me, he says, I want to go see her because she's reported to be enlightened. And I'd never really heard that description of someone before. So I asked him, so what does that mean? And he said, oh, well, she's had the God experience. And I said, what? What? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, she's seen God. And I busted out laughing, and he didn't laugh. And he was he was a math professor. He was very stoic. He was a very disciplined person. And I was quite taken. I was like, what do you mean? And he says, no, he really believed it. And so I got really curious. And I said, do you mind if I go with you? He said, of course not. Come along. So we went over there. And this is where the Uvi Groovy story starts.
Yeah.
Because I went and we walked into this, we went to Sharda convent there, Sharda Mat in Dakshineshwar. And the guards, the security walked us into her office because men weren't allowed in the convent, obviously. Yeah. And she was sitting at a desk. I was sitting in front of the desk. They put 2 chairs there for me and Philip. So I'm sitting in the front desk looking at her, but she's sitting facing to my right at a 90-degree angle. And she's deep in meditation. And her feet are on a little tiny stool. And there's a woman in a beautiful sari with all kinds of bangles and beads, doing a wonderful, in tears while she's weeping, doing this beautiful flower mandala around Moksha Prana's feet. And I'm thinking, wow, that's crazy interesting.
That's more than I've ever seen.
Yeah. So I was sitting there and staring at Moksha Prana, looking for a halo, looking for lightning coming out of her ears. I mean, jokingly, I say that jokingly now, but I was really at that level of just kind of just looking for some spooky reality in her that made her enlightened. And I kind of decided after about 8 or 10 minutes that she was just a nice old woman, and I just kind of then started focusing on what else was going on in the room, because some people were singing and some people were in meditation and some people were just taking care of their family and whatnot. And I just was kind of fascinated with the whole scene. And I thought, well, that was worth the price of admission. I'm not disappointed. So I was sitting there, and she comes out of meditation, and she slowly raises her head and opens her eyes very slowly and turns toward me and makes eye contact with me. And at this point, I don't know what to call all of this. I just call it a vision, but it wasn't a vision. I was in it, and it was like a dream, but it had a significantly higher resolution than a dream.
Sure.
And it's never gone away. It's as vivid in my mind today as it was 25 years ago. And I was suddenly, as soon as she looked at me, as soon as her eyes made contact with my eyes, I was nowhere. Absolute pitch black, no sensations of any kind, just simply being. Yeah. And I was obviously caught completely out of on my left foot. I was not afraid at first. I was just completely puzzled. Like, what? I thought maybe I had passed out or something. I didn't know what to think. And just as I was beginning to panic, a light comes on, and I'm sitting on a stool at the back of a stage. And hanging in front of me are 7 scrims. A scrim is a very thin material. So on theater, if you light it from the front, it's opaque. But if you light it from the back, it's see-through. And they always use them for dream sequences. That's how they communicate dreaming on the stage. And so I'm looking at seeing that, and out there's this beautiful, gilt boxed, red velvet chaired auditorium. And so I look down at myself sitting on the stool, and there's no body there. I'm just a point of reference. There's no physicality to me at all. And that freaks me out. So now I'm getting nervous. Maybe I'm dead. So, and as soon as I start panic, so that panic again starts to come up. Moksha Prana, the woman, appears at the front of the stage, right next to the light, which was one of those bare bulb lights that they put on the front of a vacant stage as a tradition. I don't know what's behind it, but it was there. And she's standing next to it, and she walks to me, passing everything as if she was just on a different plane. Nothing moved, nothing was affected by her presence. She just came straight to me. And she whispered in my ear, the ear of my ear, because it didn't come in through the brain or through the senses. It came in from underneath, like a knowing.
Yeah, I was
Like,
just say
like
that's a knowing. You just
yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I suddenly understood that the stage was my body, and that I was just a point of reference arbitrarily in that body, and that I was using all of those widgets and whatnot of the stage to express my story. That the scrims were my gender, my age, my education, my
Sure.
all the things that I used to navigate the world. And I was so enamored of that, so amazed, very, very excited because of that, because the insides, my inside world had always just sort of been a black box. You close your eyes, you go to sleep. There's nothing else in there. And this betrayed what I knew. Again, it was just a
Now
no.
it's everything.
Yeah, as if it had always been there, and I just had never seen it. That was how it felt, and I suddenly understood exactly what I was, how I was, and what the game was. And she whispered two words into my ear, and this also is it's the saddest thing for me too, because it was the most profound thing I've ever experienced, and I can't describe it. So over the years, this is kind of what I've come up with. Right now I'm telling you this story, but all I can give you is the syllables, the sound, and you
Oh
have to
no, I
project.
totally get it.
Yeah, you have to
If
project
it's
everything
it,
else.
if you experience it and you can describe it, that's not it.
Yeah. But the effect of it was amazing, because
Yeah.
with her two words that she whispered to me, everything that she had put in those words came with it. So when I
Yeah.
heard the words, I didn't have to think about them. I didn't have
Right.
anything, because suddenly what was just dropped in was a full understanding of what she was saying. And the two words were so simple. She just said, "It's okay." And that, you can't imagine, it didn't go deep, it went all the way through me.
Yeah.
And everything that it passed broke and fell
Mm-hmm.
and fell. I just had an utter, complete inner collapse. My
Sure.
whole world, everything just broke. And I opened my eyes at that point, and I was laying on the floor of the room that we were in with Philip. I had fallen out of the chair. I was in
Sure.
fetal position on the floor, and I was crying so hard that I could not breathe. I thought I was going to pass out. It was like a toddler, like, and just weeping. And I couldn't get myself together. I couldn't bring myself into control, um, because God, that release, that relief, that embrace that I felt of grace in that moment was everything that I needed at one time, everything. And all my fears around my situation, the idea of being condemned to hell, the idea of all of that stuff completely just fell away, gone. And the release behind it was just unbelievable. And I managed to get on all fours and crawled around the desk, around the mandala flower, and just collapsed again on the floor. And I just kept repeating, "My teacher, my teacher, my
Yeah.
teacher, my teacher." I couldn't say anything else. And she couldn't speak English at the time, and so, or seemingly anyway. And so she sent her assistant Gita Prana over, and Gita Prana helps me stand up. And she says, "What are you saying to Mataji?" And I was still repeating, just, "My teacher, my teacher, my teacher." And she tells Moksha Prana, and Moksha Prana smiles very sweetly and says, "No, I am not your teacher. And
Yeah.
I said to Gitapan, I said, this is not a question.
Yeah.
I'm not asking her to be my teacher. She is my teacher, and I don't
Sure.
care what her response is to that.
Right. Right.
so, so anyway, she said no, and then she, you know, so she asked me, you know, when I kept insisting, she asked me kind of what my background was, you know, so through an interpreter, I was telling her, you know, that just that I wanted her to be my teacher, and that, you know, that, and she said, well, have you read this, that, or that? She asked me some questions about Vedanta, and of course I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about it. And so she says, it is not proper for me to be your teacher. Yeah. And so I walked out of there, still not, I wasn't disappointed because she was still my teacher. I honestly didn't care what she was
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. It didn't matter at that point.
I was like, that's,
So,
you
but
can't do
before
that
you
to me.
go any
And I
further,
will,
I want to ask you a couple of questions if you don't mind, because I
no,
don't
not
want to
at all.
get past it and then forget, because I think they're significant. Number one, when your I guess partner at that time said, we want to go see this particular person, she said she's enlightened.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm going back to the question is saying, okay, so to me, a person, so I'm asking you, what would be your opinion, or how do you see enlightenment? Because I see enlightenment as no person can be enlightened. You're waking up really from who this person is, or this persona. Enlightenment is going to the point where you're understanding who and what you are in truth, and it's not a person. It's not the
Mhm.
body mind. It's the substrate or the conscious awareness behind
Mhm.
all of it. And so that's kind of how I see it. I would ask that of you. Do you see that as well that way, or?
I see that as a possible, one possible manifestation of it, or non-manifestation of it.
Yeah,
But I think there's also levels of samadhi, levels of
yeah,
understanding
okay.
that are given
Fair
to it.
enough.
And so I feel like, you know, whether she is or not, if I was enlightened, I could tell you whether she was or not. I don't.
If you were what now?
If I was enlightened, you know, in that
Oh,
sense,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
then I could say, you know, I could say, oh, she's this or she's that. I don't know. She gave me something more than precious, something I never I didn't even
Yeah,
know was
yeah.
possible. And it changed everything, because for the first time I had direct evidence that things are not as they appear.
Yeah, so it's a subjective knowing.
Yeah, it was
You are that, not that you are a object. So
yeah, that I'm not an object, but I'm part and parcel of the whole of it. I still have a
yeah,
point of particularity, you know,
right,
that
right, right.
because you have to have that to manifest, to have a body.
Yeah, right.
And so I had that particularity, and obviously she did too. Um, so it was just a knowing of the nature of what the mechanics of myself, of how I was put together as an entity within the dream anyway.
So
And
then what happens after you leave the, I don't know, ashram, if you will?
right, well, I went down immediately and bought all the books that she had asked me if I had read. And I went back to the room, and for the next, I don't know, 24, 30 hours, I read. I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, I didn't do
Yeah,
anything. I just read every one of those books. And the moment that I finished, I got up and walked down to the ghat and caught a boat back over to Dakshineshwar, and semi forced my way into the convent. You know, I simply wouldn't take no for an answer from the
right.
guards. And so and found Moksha Prana. She agreed to see me, and I told her, I said, okay, I've read all those books. You're my teacher. And she said, you read those books? I was like, yes, of course I read those books. And so she was asking me some questions and I was answering them. And so she says, she still said no, you know, and
Yeah,
but this time she didn't just say no. She said, call me again tomorrow at this time. on the telephone. Here's the number. I said, okay.
Great.
And then she just had me kind of jump through hoops for the next 8 or 10 days or so. And on my last morning in Calcutta, we were supposed to catch the train to Dehradun that day, or up toward Dehradun. We were going to get out. Well, we were just going to, I don't remember the details. It was a train to Dehradun. I think we got out at Rishikesh because we stayed at the ashram in Kankal there.
Yeah.
And so she still said no, but and after all that, we're at the last day in Calcutta. Okay. So that morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, there's a rap at our door. We're staying in the Western Guest House through Philip's connections. And to me, it's just a nice free place to stay.
Right.
But we're in there, and this brahmachari is at the door at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he said, "Is Vance here?" And I said, "I'm Vance." He said, "There's a telephone call for you in the office." And I was like, "No, there can't be a phone call for me in the office. I don't know. I don't know where I am, and I don't know what this place is, and nobody knows I'm here. How?" And he says, "No, there's a phone call for you." So I quickly get dressed, and he takes me to the office. And of course, back in those days, it looked like a Lily Tomlin set. It was like all these big black tables, and they only had that one phone. So I picked up the receiver on the little school desk there and sat there, and it was Gita Prana calling and said, "Mataji will give you initiation this morning at 8 a.m. Please come with an offering for the mother. Please do not let anyone touch you on the way here. And you must be wearing something new that has never been worn before." And I said, "Okay, all right." So I hung up and I thought, okay, well, this is a pickle. How do you get anywhere in India in 2 hours? Or an hour and a half at that point. And so I was sitting there, I was getting up from the phone, and it turns out the brahmachari was eavesdropping on the other end, of course. So he shows up with a little basket of fruit, and he says, "Here, you can offer this to Mataji." So I took that little basket of fruit. I went down to my room, and as fate would have it, the day before, me and Philip had gone to Newmarket in Calcutta.
You'd gone shopping.
Yeah, and I had bought a kurta pajama outfit as a souvenir.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, well, cool, I'll put that on. So I dressed in that, and I went down to the river to catch the boat over, but there were already 11 people on the boat. And I knew if I got on the boat, I would be touched by somebody.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't get on the boat. And on the other side of the dock was a man sleeping in his boat. And so I went over and banged on the side of his boat and really annoyed him, and woke him up and said, "Dakshineshwar." And he, looked at me stone faced and pointed to the other and said, "Dakshineshwar, you fool, get out of my life." But I said, no, Dakshineshwar. And he said, "No, Dakshineshwar, there." And I pointed a third time at him. I said, "No, Dakshineshwar." And he looked at me very annoyed. He said, "Dakshineshwar here, 800 rupees. Dakshineshwar there, 10 rupees. And I said, "Okay, 800 rupees. And I just counted out 800 rupees. He's looking at me like I've got two heads, of course. I get in the boat, and then we parallel the other boat across the river. And everybody in the other boat's just snickering and looking at me, thinking that I don't know that we're going to the same place. Anyway, that was my final humiliation. But we get to the other side. I get on, I go to see Moksha Prana, and she initiates me and teaches me how to meditate, has me sit in her personal shrine there in the monastery, in the convent, and meditate. She intended for me just to go in and offer my pranams to Thakur and leave. But I didn't know. So I just went in. I thought that I was supposed to stay in there. So I stayed in there, and I stayed in there all morning for a few hours. I was just meditating. I was in heaven. I was so excited.
Beautiful.
I really thought that I was going to realize God right then and there, because, everybody that I'd read in the gospel, which was one of the books that I read there, that everybody was, having visions and popping in and out of samadhi like it was, breakfast. And so I thought, I really had the impression that my enlightenment would be any minute, that I would totally have this ecstatic
I'm here.
Exactly. Anyway, she comes in or Gita Prana comes in quite a bit later to take care of the shrine. Or I don't think actually it was Gita Prana. I think it was just some young brahmacharini, but came in startled to see a man sitting in Ma's shrine in the convent. So she runs and gets Gita Prana. Gita Prana comes and says, "Oh, Vance, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I was just sitting and meditating." And she says, "You've been here all morning?" I said, "Yes." She says, "Have you had any food or water or anything?" I said, "No, no." And of course, she gets so concerned, just as the sweetest grandmother you could ever imagine, takes me down the stairs, these back stairs into the kitchen of the convent. And these 3 or 4 nuns down there just begin cooking and making one of the most delicious meals I ever had in my life. And it was like I had 5 grandmothers who had loved me for a million years, taking care of me. They were so amazingly just sweet. And God forbid that I liked something, because I would end up with like 10 more of them.
Oh, yeah.
So beautiful experience. Anyway, we left that day. We took our train to Dehradun, and on the rest of the trip, I met 4 other people that gave me a significant piece of information. One was there was a head of we went to what was that place, Mayavati, and in Mayavati, that center in that there was a Swami who was temporarily watching over it. I guess the other Swami had to travel or something. And every afternoon at 4, he would take a walk. And I started joining him on it. As I saw that he was doing that, I asked him. So we started walking. And for the first time in my life, every time in my life before that, when someone talked about God, it always came with a reference. In John 3:16, it says, and Romans 8:28, it says, nobody ever talked about God like they knew him. And this Swami had such beautiful stories of the beloved. And every single day that we walked, it wasn't 10 minutes in before the tears would start trickling out of the outer corner of his eyes. And he would just dreamily just tell me about God, just about God, just as if he knew him, as if he experienced him, And it was, my lid was coming off again, just like, my God, look at the possibilities here. Look at the beauty of this. It's unbelievable. And I just learned so much from him. Such an intimacy was presented of what it was to know the beloved, to know the divine. And then we were walking in the woods in Rishikesh, looking for the Westerners beach, actually, on the Ganges. And we're walking down a trail, and this beautiful woman comes walking up and, asks us, "Are you going to see the Swami?" And we were in the middle of the woods. I was like, "No, we're looking for the Westerners beach." And she said, "Oh, well, just a ways down the trail, there's an orange gate. Go through it. See the Swami." And so she goes off, and Gregor and I were just kind of chuckling over how odd that was, because she also invited us to a questionable ritual, which we didn't accept for it. It was a tantric thinger, and we didn't accept that invitation. But we walked down, and suddenly there in the middle of the woods was this orange gate, freshly painted, which is significant in India because nothing is freshly painted in India.
Yeah, right.
And so we went through it. And when we went through it, this very, very old monk.
Hi, Uncle Vance.
Good morning, Bonnie. Oh.
Are you in Hollywood right now?
No. Right now, I am at some good friends of mine here in Sacramento.
Oh, okay.
But they sent me a plane ticket and an invitation to come for Thanksgiving, and I took it.
I don't blame you.
So I head down to Hollywood on Monday. I'll take the train down.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll be there for. Yeah,
I've been to that. Been to the Hollywood Center, and Sarvadevananda had initiated me there, or not there, but here in Atlanta. But I did speak with him and met with him a few times out there. Matter of fact, all these pictures behind you here are taken from right outside of Hollywood in the Mojave Desert.
Yes, they have a center up there called Pinion Hills.
Oh, they do?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a desert retreat. It's not a center as such. but there's a Swami that lives there, but it's in the middle of the desert.
Perfect. I mean, because my
Um,
son, he's a rocket scientist, and they launched from the Mojave Desert, and he lives in Tehachapi.
Oh, my parents lived in Tehachapi when they
Yeah.
were in California. Wow. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so,
My
yeah,
father worked at Mojave up there on the Global Hawk
on the
program.
what now?
Global Hawk, he was the first test pilot for
Oh,
these drones. He was the first test pilot of the first drones. Every military person that knows how to fly drones
is out of there.
can trace their lineage back to my dad. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Well, yeah. So when my son, they went to space for the first time in April of 2023, and I flew out for the launch.
wow.
And
Something.
yeah, and so I stopped in and saw Swami Sarvadevananda and all that. But those pictures are from that launch.
That's amazing. If you go see Swami Sarvadevananda now, he's a completely different person. He has turned into such a blissful mother.
Really?
Oh my God, it's radical change. Because when I first went to, well, this is being recorded. I won't tell those stories.
Yeah.
but I'll just
Yeah,
say
no,
that
I get it. I get it. Yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's just changed so much. He's just changed so much. It's beautiful. It's a very inspiring person now to me.
Well, I was just curious because I thought you were Jody had mentioned that you may have been going back to the Hollywood
Yes,
Temple,
I am. Yeah,
and
I'll be there on.
your experiment with being 2 years and off and so forth was coming to its close, and that you may be anyway. I don't want to interrupt the story, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Please continue.
Yeah. Well, the so we got into the Orange Gate, walked through it. This
Yeah, yeah.
man in just a loincloth, very old man, came running out like a child with a stick in his hand, staff in his hand, and just beaming, just wonderful. And he comes up and he just grabs Phillips in my hands and pulls us like an eager child all the way down to the bank of the Ganges there. He tells us to take a dip in the Ganges, all with hand language because he didn't speak any English. And so we got in the river and took a dip, and then we got out, and he took us to his kutir. He lived in a little mud hut, and it turns out that there's a wealthy man that had built 4 or 5 of these little kutirs on his property, and would allow wandering sadhus to stay there as long as they liked, and he would bring them out 1 bowl of khichdi every day for their food. And so, and it was like maybe 6 by 6. It was a tiny little thing, and absolutely nothing in it except for 2 grass mats and
Yeah.
a little asana that he had. He sat on the asana. He made us sit down on the 2 little grass mats, and he just looked at us for a moment, and then he began chanting. And I don't know what he was chanting. I mean, now I know it was the Gita, but at the time I had no idea what he was chanting, and I didn't know what language it was or anything, but it was beautiful. And as he got going, he started swaying, and he was gone. He was still chanting, but just gone. And his face lit up in such a beautiful smile, such a beautiful openness. I thought if he smiles any bigger, he's literally going to swallow his head. It was marvelous. And I sat there and listened to that for I don't know how long it was, but I was completely transported. And I left there with Philip, and we were walking back to our hotel room. And I told him, I said, oh, well, I don't know what that was, Philip. I said, I don't know what that was. But whatever it was showed me that I have gone the wrong direction in my life. I said, he has nothing. Even his loincloth was tattered. It's like he has nothing. And I said, he has more joy, more light, more wonder in him than I have ever even thought was possible. I've never seen anything even close to that sweetness, that happiness there. And so we went back every day for like 10 days. The 10 days we were in Rishikesh, we went back every day and sat and listened to him just chant. And on our last day, when we were getting ready to catch the train back from there to Calcutta to fly home, we're walking in the woods, and I just tell Philip, I said, you know, Philip, in all my life, I've never wanted to be old. I said, and on this trip, I've met 5 people who inspired me to be old.
Yeah.
And I said, it's clear to me that they have found the meaning of life, that they have not grown bitter, not grown sick, not grown disabled, but have lit up as human beings. I said, all of them were wearing this orange color, which I guess is a monk. I said, when I get back to San Francisco, I'm going to become a monk. And Philip was quiet for a moment, because that had big implications for us, you know.
Yes.
And he says, well, the only thing odd about it is I'm going to do the same thing. And so we came back from that trip, and he moved into the Sacramento monastery, and I moved into the San Francisco monastery. And that was that. I had no idea what I had done. I still don't really know what I'd done, but I'm having the time of my life. Of course, at both ends of the spectrum, you know, there's been periods there that were the most difficult, and there were periods there that were ecstatic. But at this point in my life, I know that I have the secret. I know that I have the meaning of life.
Yeah.
And I bathe in it.
Every
I
day.
roll in it, you know, and my practice is very similar. No, it's not in that sense. But my practice is just a communion.
Yeah.
Just sitting in the light of love and being completely transported without any effort on my part, without anything that I can take responsibility for in myself. But life is joy for me after a very long journey.
Can relate to that.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much. That was just incredible. I relate to every single thing in the principle and the struggle and every single aspect of that journey for entirely different circumstances, however.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I feel like it's not really my journey. I think it's just the template of what all of us, what the journey is. And now all the pieces, like you say, have their own stories, have their own particulars, but it is the journey home.
So when I had heard that you were on this 2-year, and you sort of explained a little bit about it, you know, on the past Sunday, and the thought came to my head when you said, here I am. I don't have the security of the ashram. I don't have, my meals and, clothes and blah, blah, blah. And the thought came to me, I said, well, I live that way every day. And I see that as the razor's edge of surrender. Because you don't really know. And that's the way I lived for many years. Circumstance forced me into that situation where you literally need to live on that complete surrender, not knowing what would happen next. And I just found that, and of course, look where you are now, today, and getting ready to.
Huh? Where am I?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm assuming Sacramento in a friend's house.
Yes, indeed.
That's all there is for the moment.
Oh, sorry.
And just for me, and being a Swami, maybe, and I've asked a number of the Swamis about what happened to me, and if they could comment. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you and see what you thoughts that you might have. When I in Tibetan Buddhism, a group that a David Hawkins study group, and I mentioned that to you. I don't think you know who David Hawkins is, but spiritual teacher and so forth. Anyway, they had decided to go see what was called the Buddha relics. And simply put, It's the Tibetan Buddhism, the current Dalai Lama, all of that. When the monks pass away, they cremate their bodies. And if they're enlightened, they're said to leave a little pearl or relic in the ashes. And so throughout history, before 500 BCE and all that, they were collecting all these pearls or relics, and they put it in an exhibit and it toured the world. So we decided to go see it. And it was in Asheville, North Carolina. It's about 4 hours from Atlanta for the weekend. And we go up there, and I've had a number of spiritual experiences up to this point. So I was, shall we say, ripe, if you will. Anyway, you could get a blessing from one of the monks. He would take some of these relics, put them in a little stupa or a little container. You'd get on your knees and you go up to him, and he'd put the stupa on your head. He'd say the blessing. Well, I need all the blessings I can get. I'm in line. I go up there. I'm on my knees. He does that stupa on my head. He says the blessing, and I mean, this energy shot straight into my heart chakra, and I couldn't get up. I mean, I was going to face plant on my knees in front of this monk, and I struggled for a while, and I couldn't get up, and I finally crawled out, similar to what you're saying when. And so I'm on the side trying to figure out, well, what just happened? And from that moment on, and this has been more than 10 years ago, I mean, electricity started running up and down my spine. It's to this day, it is concentrated right there in the middle of my forehead. And all kinds of things that I had never even heard of started happening. Electronic malfunctions, animals following me, I'm just birds landing on me at work. Yeah, I mean, precognition to clairvoyance, clairaudio, all kind. I mean, and I come to find out these are called term cities, and they're happening through me. I'm not doing anything, going out of body, on and on. And I had no idea what was happening. And this is what led me to Vedanta. Okay. And so all these things are happening, and I don't know what's happening. But the most important thing, or the thing that was the most difficult for me to be able to navigate, was I had, through a series of surrender a few years before, after running over my wife with a car, and we hadn't, anyway, we'll get to that one day, but I call it the day I touched the face of God. All right. And it was that same place that you're talking about that is a samadhi or a satori, or I had done that after a number of those, incidents in my life. Well, this kept taking me back to that, and I couldn't function in the world. I was in bliss and just could not. I mean, time and space were gone. I wrecked my company truck 3 times in less than a year because I couldn't tell, going less than 1 mile an hour, because I couldn't tell where I was in space. Time, it was always right now. Anyway, and more and more and more. Anyway, the bliss kept happening. I would pull up to a stop sign and go into bliss in my car. I'd pull into a customer's driveway, go into bliss. So I'm not functioning. I mean, I'm sort of able to do my job, but not really. And I mean, I take that back. I did a good job when I was able to get there and do the job. It's just coming out of that bliss long enough to be able to focus. And to be able to focus on anything in the linear world was just incredibly, incredibly exhausting. So I had been listening to Swami Chidbrahmananda online at that time. And I figured if anyone might be able to help me with this, he could do that. So I called the New York Center, and they referred me to the Atlanta Center. Again, I didn't know they had one. And so I met with Brother Shankara, and this led me to the point where Brother Shankara, Sarvadevananda, and monks such as yourself are saying to me that I needed to be able to hold that energy in my heart chakra and to try to do that. And that's what, so this bliss is what led me to Vedanta. And it's been many years now. I haven't gone out of body. I still have all those other things still happening, and it's fine, but I am able to function, and I can go into those bliss times when it's appropriate. But what I found, and what they're telling me is through my education, if you will, on spirituality and so forth, this is called Kundalini, and those things that were happening are called the cities. But when I ever try to talk to them or talk about that to Eastern monks and so forth, they don't want to talk about it. They tell me that they see that sort of as a personal thing, I think. And they also see it.
Yeah, there's a very particular reason that we don't. That's why I will only, and I don't always tell that story even when I'm asked, but I never tell it unless I'm asked for it. But Swami Prabhupada says, he says, that accompanying those experiences is a profound amount of energy, prana, that's given to you. And if you have a choice, you can hold that within and use that to move yourself toward the ideal. Or if we're not wise and not careful, we convert it into egoism. That story becomes part of our ego.
Right.
And it crystallizes into ego. And so we waste a very precious gift by increasing our ego and attaching to this story as if it belongs to us. And then we get since that's such a dangerous thing, they say that only find a like-minded person to tell these stories to. Don't tell them freely, and certainly not to somebody who hasn't requested or who isn't someone, a spiritual seeker of some
I understand.
presence, as it were, so that it stays inside, so that it becomes something that lifts us higher.
So I'm glad you said that. No one in my entire life has indicated that to me. Okay, to this point. Through the David Hawkins study, he is sort of saying that, but he's not saying that to hold it inside to have it propel you higher. He's saying that and teaching it from the point of view of exactly what you're saying of it's not you, it's coming through you.
Yes.
You cannot take it can become an attachment to feed the personal ego. And so I use his Eastern teaching to try to separate the fact that, yes, this is happening, it's not me, and not attaching anything of my own personal self to that, and just allowing it to happen. And I've done that, and I think I've done the right thing by maintaining that separation. But nobody from the Eastern teachings has ever said that to me. The only thing they've ever said is we don't talk about it. Well, from a Westerner and from a Westerner's point of view, I had to talk about it. I mean, I grew up Methodist. We put our dollar in the plate and talked about Jesus, and they never talked about any. I had no idea what was happening to me. I couldn't figure out anything. You see what I mean? And I think that things like that are happening more and more and more to and in the Western culture. And I don't think Western culture has any idea how to handle that.
No.
And how is it that we have to talk about it to some degree and have somewhere to go for these people, that these things are, consciousness is evolving, and it's going to happen more and more and more to more and more people. Where are they going to go with this? They got to know about it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm seeing it as that, not as an ego, John's doing this, as these people need help. I mean, you're walking the fine line of, um, I mean, if you went and talked about what I talked about in the medical profession, they put you uh, they'd lock you up and try to feed you full of drugs.
Yeah, well, that's not only here. I mean, look at Tuckworth. They've also called him a crazy man and started getting physicians to try and fix his insanity. So
I
it's
mean,
these
uh,
aren't common anywhere in any culture.
but well, I guess I'm grateful that I've been able to find at least some outlet for it. But it's taken a long time, and it's taken a very difficult road to get there.
Mm.
But um, what are your thoughts on ch- trying to change that? I mean,
I have no need to change anything. I couldn't if I wanted to.
that's a good answer.
Yeah. No, the moment is always perfect. God is
All
everywhere
right.
present and always perfect. So
Okay.
that's,
I get that. I really do. I
yeah,
really,
I see life doesn't happen on a line in reality. It happens on a
no,
point,
it doesn't.
so we can, there's no past and no future to drive us in a direction. We just simply have to be. And at this point, life is really simply accepting the moment as it is, taking the components of the moment, applying Satchitananda to them,
Yeah,
to produce something beautiful, something meaningful, and release it, and then do it again every moment, just
that's
continually.
that's what we've just done right here.
Yes, yes, indeed.
That's what we've just done right here. And I think, yeah. Have you ever heard of Michael Singer?
I possibly, I think I saw a video of his come up in my feed. Is that possible? There was a
Maybe.
last name Singer.
Michael Singer, let's see, his most famous book, I guess, is The Surrender Experiment.
Oh,
And he was an intellectual in Florida, in grad school, going to the University of Florida, and he was like a hippie.
mm-hmm.
And he started getting into Yogananda. And long story short, the only thing he's ever done is own the moment, surrender to what's in front of him. And I mean, he has one of the largest ashrams, if you will, in Alachua, Florida, or right outside of Gainesville.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, owns a multi-billion dollar company. And the only thing he's ever done, he hadn't planned anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's surrender to the moment. And I just
Mm-hmm.
finished his book, and because it's so similar to like a David Hawkins letting go, it's similar to all the all the 12 steps going into the surrender aspect of it, karma yoga,
Mm-hmm.
particularly karma yoga, because that's all he's ever tried to do was surrender and then do the best he possibly could with what was in front of him as a karma yogi. And I followed Yogananda for quite a while, but after my Buddha relic experience, they want with the Raja Yoga, they want you to focus in the third eye. And every time at some point, I had to stop. I couldn't. I couldn't
Mm.
function as it was, and to come,
Yeah.
to try to concentrate that, it just would.
Yeah. It's like Holy Mother disciple came to her with the same problem. And she said, well, you can focus either here or here, but she says this one's dangerous.
Yeah.
If you haven't mastered the yamas and niyamas, that
Mhm.
you can hurt yourself by focusing there. She says, focus in the heart. You can do the same thing, and you're not in danger. So
Yeah, that's what Shankara and that's what uh, Swami Sarvadevananda have taught.
yeah,
And the same with Swami Sarvapriyananda.
yeah.
I've talked to him about it, and yeah, that was I enjoyed him very much.
Oh
I
yeah,
had the
no, he's a
opportunity.
wonderful, wonderful Swami. Yeah, I love
I
his
was
mind.
his opportunity to be his driver when he was here in Atlanta.
No,
Picked
wonderful.
him up
Yeah,
at the airport, and
yeah. He was. I lived across the hall from him at Bellermont for 6 months
oh
in
wow,
2012.
yeah.
So
And I'm hoping, yeah. I mean, he's indicated that he's planning on coming back to Atlanta. He and I emailed maybe a couple weeks ago, and looking forward to him maybe coming at the end of next year or beginning of the following.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when are you coming back?
When the mother brings me,
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
I don't know. I'm taking very seriously at this point in my life that living on a point, I have nowhere to go. My life is a point.
Yeah.
I can't do anything but surrender. So
Isn't
that's
that the truth?
practice.
That's
Yeah.
the only solution.
It's and it's the one that works the best.
I know. Well, and I think that's the entire. I mean, that was Michael Singer's entire book,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it has been the entire practice for me, probably in the last 15 years.
Mm.
15
Yeah, it's
years.
beautiful. It's starting to spread around quite a bit too. I just watched a documentary called on Thomas Keating,
Yeah,
uh, called Thomas Keating, The Rising Tide of Silence.
yeah,
And he's marvelously inspiring story of his life. Oof, wonderful.
yeah.
Really something.
Yours is the same. I mean, it just uh, incredible. I think I would speak for many Vedantins in Atlanta that they'd love to have you here.
Yeah. If I was asked, I would be thrilled myself.
I'm asking you.
I'm not self-actuated. I've surrendered at this point, at least from one perspective, surrendered to the order for what they
Yeah,
need, where they're going to place me. I've gotten a little bold in the last 10 years, I guess. That's why I ended up in Colorado.
yeah.
I, I just couldn't take it anymore. So yeah. So that experiment's finished. And so that's why I'm coming. That's why I'm in Hollywood, or will be in Hollywood in a few days,
Yeah, yeah.
to find out what's next. My clock has run out. My granted leave of absence to do the experience is up.
Yeah,
So I submitted my report on everything that has been done and what has happened in the 2 years. And I ended the report by saying, I think it's worthwhile. I think there is a society that has begun in Colorado, and if it's important to the order, then I'll stay there and keep doing that. If it's not, then here I am.
Atlanta needs a Swami.
You know, yeah, and it's
I
a
mean,
long.
I'm advocating, but I don't have a choice in it. But
Yeah, no, well, I tell you, I have not felt as home in another center as I felt in Atlanta.
oh,
And,
that's good to hear.
yeah, and I woke up in the middle of the night with a full set of plans for Atlanta, but what can I do? I
Submit them.
yeah. Yeah, well,
Submit them. They need they yeah, the direction is needed. Yeah,
yeah,
both spiritually and organizationally.
yeah. Those things I don't. They're not a part of my world. But when this idea for Colorado occurred, I asked Mother, what do I do? you know, especially when I got permission to do it, and I went out
Yeah,
there, and when I arrived, I'm renting a room, um, in
yeah,
a small house, and I sat in front of the shrine on my first day, and Mother's only instruction to me, and for the entire time, she says, "You stay here." You
yeah,
stay here and I'll do the rest. Your only job in this life, stay here, and things will happen as I want them to happen.
yeah.
So I don't plan, which drives everyone crazy. It used to drive me crazy about Swami Chidbrahmananda. And it was funny, even because when I planned to do this thing, and I use those words on purpose, uh, when I got to Colorado, I fully intended to run it like a Westerner, have a 5-year plan, have a mission statement, have a
Yeah, yeah,
boom, 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 boom. But when I sit, Mother makes it very clear that that's ego. You sit in your point.
yeah.
I am what you are manifesting. She said, and so that's all I do. That's my only responsibility. And I figure, I think that's probably for the rest of my life. That's the only thing I'm responsible for. So I
That's
think,
it. It I talk about circumstance with my life and so forth, and it turned out to go absolutely nothing like I had planned. Obviously,
oh, of course, because you're not the doer.
yeah, exactly. But having said that, it seems to me like God uses extremes to make a point. My life is that example,
Uh-huh.
and uh, I wrote that. And then I went to the question of what am I supposed to do with this? And I've asked that for a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that ever came out was tell your story.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's significant. I've been trying to write a book for the last 3 years. I can't. Mother just simply won't let me do it. So I've
I
got
got a biographer that you
it.
can use.
Yes. Well, if that opens, that opens.
He's really good.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, this, yeah, that's not a biography. I'm not going to write that. I want, I don't know. I would like to find a book.
memoir,
What's that?
a
No,
memoir.
no, no, there's nothing to remember here.
Come on
But
now.
what I'm interested in is finding a way to inspire the uninspirable, the people who have been hurt and buried by the mistakes of modern
Yeah.
society and modern religion, to give them a place that helps them believe that there's a step forward for them.
Seek the source.
Yeah, not yeah, it's just more pay
More
attention.
focused.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
If you are already everything you could ever
Yeah.
hope to
Yeah.
be, just start paying attention so that you know that.
Yeah. A friend of mine, he's had Kundalini experience. I've met one person in my entire lifetime who has what I have. One.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just met him in the last maybe 6 months. But he shared a story about Jesus that I thought was profound. And it goes into your unconditional love that you were moving towards in this past Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, and it was a parable. And he said, go invite everybody to the party. I don't care what you've done. It's all
Mm-hmm.
forgiven. Everyone's welcome to the party, whoever you are. Just come. You're welcome. And all of it is yours. And that forgiveness on that backside of what all of us, of what you're speaking to, is he didn't care about anybody that. I mean, he forgives all of it. You're welcome. Come and accept it. It's yours. That's unconditional love.
Yes.
But he told it from the parable of what, and cited the references in the Bible and so forth. And I just thought that profound, and found it very profound that you spoke pretty close to the same thing. And he told me that a week or two before that, and I was like, wow, it's coming up every day.
Yeah. No, definitely. I don't know about these things, but in myself, I sense a big transition.
Yeah.
First, there's going to be a huge undoing.
Oh man, it's happening.
Yeah, I know.
It's happening.
And if I still have a body when it's over.
I'm gonna say, if I'm still here.
Yeah. Marvelous. If not, well, that was none of my business anyway.
There you go.
So,
well, this has been just amazing. I'm really glad we've had this opportunity.
Indeed.
Yeah.
It is wonderful. Holy
I hope that, well, we'll see. I guess I'll say a little prayer to the mother and see if she can point you our way.
Yes, well, she might have somebody better in mind too. So don't pollute your expectation or hope.
Well, I just know that if we do that, and do surrender to the moment, whatever comes will be better than I could have predicted anyway.
That's it. It's mother's job to bring us home. And it's her job to tell us how she's going to do it.
Boy, and that's just hilarious, that if we're willing to do that and get out of our own way.
Brother, I have stories.
Over
the last 2 years that would curl your socks. I
mean, it's like, how many people can say they've run over their wife with a car? And I'm still married 31 years later. A lot of spiritual in that one. Matter of fact, she got a new shoulder yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They put a whole new shoulder in yesterday morning.
That's amazing.
And that was a result of that accident, by the way. Yeah. She'd shattered that shoulder in 5 places and pretty much has lived without a shoulder for, I don't know,
years, huh?
20 years now.
Oh, so good that she got a new
shoulder. Huh?
Thank good she got a new one.
I know.
Awesome. So I should go. They're preparing breakfast here.
Oh.
So I should be a part of that.
Well, you need to sign off, and I want to thank you so much. And I hope to see you when you're back here in, about a month. I think it's a month.
Yeah, well, I suspect it'll be I suspect I'll be back either way, whether I just come down on my own to say hi to all the beautiful people I met there, or I'm asked to come there by those who run my life.
Yeah, right. The one who runs your life, right?
Yes, indeed. So it has been a real pleasure, and I'm glad you initiated it. Thank you.
No, thank you. So, namaste.
Namaste. Be well, brother.
I know.